What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of our Friday market update. Every Friday, I go over all the interesting headline articles of the week when it comes to the Bay Area real estate market, but also what is happening across the country. I also extract and pull the data of a majority of the counties here in the Bay Area so that you can see what is actually happening on a week-by-week basis. Now, this week has certainly been very interesting. We still don't know the winner of the election. However, there's some pretty good indications as to who won and what impact that will have. The thing for sure, though, is that there is no blue wave. And so what happens in that situation where there's no blue wave, there are a lot of programs that people were really fearful of. For example, maybe increase in wealth tax or additional taxes or a lot, there's different programs that Democrats tend to want to push, but that is not likely to happen if it's not if the Senate in this case is not all, it doesn't have the majority of Democrats. So that's why you see the stock market reacting how it's been. They like some sort of kind of gridlock type of event. And so that's why the market has been extremely strong over the last few days. And we have a lot of different California propositions that have all been pretty status quo, pretty favorable when it comes to property. It's favorable, especially for those that are contractors. You can probably see that Lyft and Uber have done, their stock prices have done very well given the changes. So certainly a lot of things to discuss, but let's jump into the Bay Area market itself. So one of the things that I notice and I'm very curious in is how are the big investors playing this space, right? If they truly felt nobody wanted to go into offices for good, then the question is why is there so much activity when it comes to the commercial real estate space? There's been $3 billion in transactions over the last 3 weeks. And here's a quick summary, and I pointed this out a couple of times over the last several weeks, right? PG&E, where their future headquarters is in downtown Oakland. I'm very bullish in Oakland. They've done very well given what's been going on. Transamerica Pyramid has actually sold these different projects. Genesis Campus out in South San Francisco, that has been going on. And then also a couple more in the South Bay. So a 10-building office campus in Cupertino where Apple is at, sold for $346 million, and then $275 million for a couple of spaces in coal mine, really next to the airport. So really interesting to see that there's still a lot of big moves happening right now. Another big move is this Sunnyvale Campus that is poised for a major redevelopment. So there's a $104 million purchase by Lane Partners. And if you're familiar with Sunnyvale, there's an area that Fujitsu actually has their headquarters. It's pretty spread out. There's not too many high rises or anything like that. They're pretty low. So there's a developer that has bought that and is very likely they would likely rezone that entire area to make a amazing corporate campus. So be on the lookout for that. That's nothing short term, but that has already taken play. And I'm sure they're going to be working with the city to make those changes. So really interesting to see that these big companies or the big investors are still buying commercial real estate property as they clearly seem to be very bullish on the Bay Area in terms of the long-term prospects. Now, in terms of rental prices, so rental prices drop again in San Francisco and other Bay Area cities. I mentioned free fall may be slowing down. So it's been a pretty steep decline over basically the last 7-8 months. As you can see, for really small units, so San Francisco has dropped 20% year over year. If you actually compare that with the March timeframe, it'll actually have been worse because March is actually when things have really dropped. A year ago, San Francisco was still doing very well and it was continuing to climb up till early this year. So a lot of areas actually have been impacted much worse. So like while you see this number here, what this number does not factor in is it does not factor in the free months of rent that people are getting. They don't calculate that in as part of the numbers. So they rather keep a higher number, but also say, hey, look, I'm going to throw in 1 or 2 months worth of rent for you to basically sign a 1-year deal, 1-year lease. I suspect that there'll be continued weakness, especially in San Francisco. I don't think it will be as steep, but I suspect it will keep going. And a lot of other areas too, like even San Jose has dropped 13% over year. And so there are other markets that have dropped, especially more expensive rental markets, so like a Palo Alto, Mountain View. They have also dropped at least 10%. I'm renting out a Palo Alto townhome. So if you know of anybody that wants to lease a Palo Alto 2-bed, 2.5-bath townhome, basically a mile from Mountain View, very close to Whole Foods, Sprouts, wonderful shopping and restaurant plaza. Like we have that listed for $3,800. And they had previously, because they just finished the current lease, the previous lease rented it for $4,300 just basically a year ago when they signed that lease. So even a strong market like Palo Alto, which has some of the best schools in all of the Bay Area, that has also dropped about 12%. But I've been getting a good amount of activity. We just put it on the market yesterday for rent, and we have several people that have inquired. So I suspect that hopefully we'll get rented pretty soon. But still, it gives you an idea. Like no places are safe. That even amazing areas like a Palo Alto has been impacted. So what's been going on from a country perspective? So mortgages and forbearances fall across all loan types. This has been falling ever since April. In terms of just look at all the job figures, look at what's been going on from a country level. A lot of places have been opened up. I think a lot of people also, while COVID cases has certainly hit all-time highs, we have been able to, there's been more of a solution in place to be able to treat and mitigate these kind of issues. It's also important to understand where are these cases happening, right? A lot of the cases are happening in the areas that, quite frankly, like look pretty risky to begin with. You may see different pictures, different images of like people at bars, people in like crowded restaurants. It's pretty wild to see how open some other areas are for the last several months. So it's not unexpected for this to happen. I mean, it's almost like at this stage, almost like shame on you if you're in these kind of close quarters. Now, if you're doing distance, it's really small groups. That's certainly very different. There's a level of risk when it comes to potentially getting it, right? But if you're in like a crowded church, or if you're in like a crowded restaurant, or you're in a bar, especially very late at night, people don't even know people are doing some pretty wild things. Then it's hard to there's not too many excuses for that. But either way, you can see the numbers have been dropping all across the board. At the same time, a lot of the government support continues to be there for those that need it. So it's really interesting to see how long this will play out. But even then, like if people were really in distress, they would simply just sell it. And this is on the US level. In the Bay Area, as you can imagine, because it's much more of a appreciation market, most people have very, very little at risk per se to be underwater. If they were really in trouble, they would just sell it and make a lot of money. So it's very important to understand the differences between markets, but at least as you can see from the entire US perspective, it's been pretty strong. Home prices jumped 6.7% in September, but are expected to moderate. You've been seeing my market data reports every single week. Hopefully you see it yourself in terms of the increases. Actually, the increase has been much higher in the Bay Area as for single family homes for the most parts, if you compare year over year prices. But as we approach the wintertime, there is the same things as seasonality. Check out my latest video. I just posted it yesterday related to, does the election actually impact real estate prices, especially here in the Bay Area? You can see for yourself the different charts. So you can see, is it the election that makes it impact? Or is it actually coincides where it's seasonality every year anyways? And you will see for yourself, spoiler alert, every year is kind of the same trends. And a lot of that has to do with combination. There's just much less available, but also people typically don't want to sell during the holidays too. So you also have to understand what is the kind of inventory that typically comes during that kind of season. So something just to be aware of. Okay, so let's talk about the data itself. So the data itself, this is San Mateo County. As you can see, the numbers have dropped substantially in terms of new listings. right? Last week we took a look. It was a pretty big decline, about 25%, only 133 new listings this week. A much higher amount when contingent pending this week, so it just squeezes that inventory. However, the story in San Mateo is very different than every other area. So single family houses, for the most parts, in most areas that you'll see momentarily, have actually increased. October was a pretty low number relative to what it was previously. And November, even though we're only a couple of days in, I suspect this will pick up again, but I suspect it'll be somewhat close to the October figures. Now, year over year, it's still higher than before, but as you can see, we have a decline from the record highs of the previous months. The reason for this, I think there's several reasons. I think short term, people are thinking, hey, look, if I can afford a $2 million house, remember, this is a single family $2 million house. At that price, it's probably like 1,800 square foot. So they're thinking, if I can afford a $2 million house, am I happy with an 1,800 square foot house? And the answer may be, it just depends on the clients, right? Some people may say, hey, look, I can go to the East Bay. I can literally get a 3,000 square foot house for maybe a third off, and which is why the East Bay has been very competitive for that reason. So it just depends on the individual. I still remain bullish long-term of San Mateo County, given there's so little options for people. The location is prime. However, people can make the decisions that they want, but it's something important for people to understand what is actually happening in San Mateo County as we speak. Now, condos, townhomes, how does that look? As you can see, it's kind of slow, steady increases over the months. Nothing too crazy, relatively flat, just depending on which time period you look at. So it's been a good opportunity for a lot of individuals. It just depends on the type of unit that you're looking at. Santa Clara County, what is the story? I mean, look at this decline in new listings. Only 313 now, which is a huge decline from what it was last month. So this is a 25% drop over kind of what it's been baselined at for a long time. Now, in terms of contingent pending, 388. So still a lot more that are contingent pending than there are new listings. Now, what does that mean for prices? October, it had dropped a little bit versus what it was September, but it's still, fairly high through the year. And as mentioned, November just got started, but it's shaping out to be pretty competitive. And then when it comes to condos, townhomes, just a small, slight, steady increase. If you look at these numbers, it's like small single-digit increases for condos and townhomes, but they are still absolutely selling. So what does this mean as a kind of summary? Like, if you're a buyer, you're going to have to be even more patient than it was before. Like, if you were actively looking at all over the last 6 months, you would have noticed that it's been competitive, right? Things move fast. There was very little to choose from relative to your search per se. But you also have to now understand, as we approach the winter season, if you thought it was hard back then, it's going to be even harder now, right? You can still see that the volume is still very high in terms of contingent pending. So the buyer side did not slow down. The only reason why this number is not higher is because there's no properties for them to buy. You also have to remember, like, what is actually available on the market. So if you are a potential seller, this year is certainly very different, right? If you are considering to sell, let's talk, because in the past, people may have wanted to skip it, but you can see there's still a high number of buyers out there, especially as people are not going away on holidays, especially because there is so little. So it's not a bad time to sell your house if you decide to do that, instead of waiting to the normal kind of spring season. And on the buy side, you're going to have to be even more patient than before. I think it's still an incredible time to buy with how low rates are. At the same time, I mean, it's just 25% less listings, right? So you just have a lot less to choose from. So be ready, but be patient is my advice when it comes to the buy side, and which is what I tell everyone. So what does Alameda look like? Alameda has been incredibly strong over the time. As I mentioned, a lot of people from San Francisco, a lot of people from San Mateo County elect to choose to live in Alameda County instead. But as you can see, it's been an increase over the months. And now, fortunately, most things are going to be selling out what it has sold previously. So we're not going to see too many unexpected jumps, which is very beneficial for buyers, right? Because like, you're going to have a higher likelihood of the property appraising, but you also have a better idea of what things will likely go for. But be aware that it is competitive out in Alameda County. That's just very normal. When it comes to condos, townhomes, as you can see, prices have been relatively flat throughout, but it has been still a small tick upwards. And the last one I want to cover is Contra Costa County. Contra Costa County has been one of the most competitive markets in this, I would say, the kind of the core Bay Area. What people have made the mistake is they think that, and they believe wholeheartedly, that people have been leaving the Bay Area, which is part true. Make no mistake, a lot of renters have left the Bay Area. But if you think about and you look at these numbers, if people truly left the Bay Area, then why are prices increasing? Why is there still so many people buying a house? Why is this the increase is actually higher than most of those areas outside of the Bay Area, where they're looking at Austin, Seattle, these other areas? It's still a higher appreciation than a lot of these other areas, even though people have been saying people have been leaving the Bay Area altogether. However, the bigger trend is that people have been leaving the core Bay Area per se in exchange for the neighboring county. So the neighboring counties like a Contra Costa County, like a Santa Cruz area, like a Marin County, those areas have done very, very well. They're just one county over. So if people want to be with their friends, they can still be with their friends, especially now there's not much traffic going on. So it's not as bad for people to get to one place to another. They're also not spending as much time with them. So those are very important to understand, like what it has been actually happening in terms of the market here, in terms of jobs, in terms of where people are actually going. Hence why you see Contra Costa County. I mean, look at this increase. I mean, this is a scale of $1 million. Don't worry about February. This is some glitch. I'm sure somebody typed the wrong information one time and just skews the number. But you can see single family houses. Look at, I mean, November is shaping to be pretty crazy, but look at even October. October was still a high. And that average for a single family was over $1 million. But if you compare that to even April, May, I mean, these were about, what is that? About maybe 800, 820. So it's gone up a lot in the last couple of months. Hence why I just brought up, like, given what you can buy there, like you think about an area like a Brentwood or an Antioch or a Concord. I mean, those areas you can get like pretty much a brand new house, $800,000, $900,000, 2,500 plus square feet house, right? So it's a huge house. It's a really nice house in those areas for that amount. So hence why a lot of people have elected to buy a second home there. I've seen a lot of people just buy second homes out in that area and just keep their primary for the time being. And you can see condos, townhomes, they have increased generally slightly over the year, but the same result as everything else. So I hope you get to understand and get to see this report that I do every week. As I mentioned, I cover what's been going on in terms of interesting activity happening in the commercial space in the Bay Area. I cover the US market in terms of what's happening across the board. And then I cover the local data so that you can see for yourself what is actually happening versus whatever clickbait headline articles you may be reading at this time. But of course, if you or anyone you know is considering to buy, sell, or invest in the Bay Area, we'd love to get introduced. It's been an amazing year so far. It's been amazing to be able to help all the different people that I've never met before. I'm glad this video has been helpful. Reach out to me anytime. You can click on the calendar link and we can set up a time to chat, or you can feel free to go on my new website, simply www.homesbyspencerhsu.com. New website. It's getting improved still. It's a great search portal. You can browse properties there, and then whenever you find a property that you are interested in, reach out. Happy to schedule the tour and go see the property. Other than that, hopefully we'll get some election results by the weekend. If not, have a good weekend, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye now. Thanks for making it to the very end of my YouTube video. If you like the content, please hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that little bell as well, since it'll give you notifications of when my next episode is. If you know of anyone that is considering to buy or sell a home here in the Bay Area, I'm never too busy to help more people. Always welcome to have a conversation, regardless if you're ready to go right now or if you wanted to buy 5 years later. Click on that calendar link, and then you'll be able to book an appointment with me and love to have a conversation about your situation. In the meantime, I also do have a monthly newsletter, so feel free to hit that link below, and then you'll be able to get my updates, personal updates that I write once a month in terms of what is going on with the market and some of my latest activities. Hope to see you at the next one. Thank you.